Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast is a member of Knicks Film School, DJ Zullo. Hello, DJ. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a minute. Last time we spoke was the infamous Game 7. So it's been a minute, but try to catch my breath a little bit. You guys seem pretty busy, so I don't know if you've had your chance to decompress yet, but it's always good to talk to you.
I have had it. I have had time. So I wrote my newsletters this week, and I think I recorded. What did I record with Monica? And I recorded, I think one other. I think I recorded with Fred. But like, I was about as unplugged as I can ever get for a week.
And the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, that's right. We did the Hall of Fame one.
One of the best shows of the year. Can't forget that one.
That was fun. No, that was a good one. And we got a couple other fun things coming up before we get into the thick of the offseason. So we'll talk a little bit of Knicks at the tail end of this one, but it's, Bill Walton obviously sadly just passed away yesterday. We just talked to Ray Marcano about Bill a bit, but you have had a personal interaction with Mr. Walton himself. So that's part of the reason we're having you on. So I just kind of want to tee you up and can you just like tell the story of how you came to cross paths with him?
Yeah, so I produced for SiriusXM Radio on their all sports channel for many years, so 2004 through about 2012. And when you are a producer, one of your main jobs is to keep your host happy. It might be the job, to be honest. Andrew can probably attest to that. I was about to say, Andrew. Yes, sir. So one of the ways to do that, and I started in the infancy of SiriusXM. So getting phone calls was sometimes a challenge. And when you're a host and you're hosting 4 hours a day and there's limited commercial breaks because it's satellite radio, it could be a lot to filibuster for that long. So you want to stuff the guest list and do it in a way to give your host a break, but while also producing good radio. One of the best ways to do that is to, as much as you can do it, get Bill Walton on your show, because when you did that, you would guarantee that your host for that day would maybe tee him up for one or two questions in a 20-minute span, and Bill would literally just go. You could ask him about like his time, as a sixth man on the 86 Celtics, and he can go in 20 different directions and on the Grateful Dead. I mean, that's just the way he was wired. He had a incredible ability to just filibuster in a way that you weren't bored. You were just along for this crazy ride. And so I would do that, and I would get him on. He was always generous, always kind, even when he couldn't do it, like he was apologetic, and just the sweetest guy. And you had to cold call these guys at that time. There was no texting. You just had to call him up. And if he answered, more times than not, he was going to give you some time. So about 2007, 2008, I was talking to the VP of the sports channel, Steve Cohen, and we're like, all right, what about just seeing if we can get Bill to do an hour show for the channel? Steve makes a few calls. He gets Bill to almost immediately agree to it, because the whole pitch was, Bill, you're going to get an hour on satellite radio, no holds barred. You just, whatever you want to talk about, could be sports, it was going to be on the sports channel, but it could be anything you want to talk about. So he was completely game for that. And because I didn't have like a great relationship with him, but I had booked him on a few shows. So I was tasked to produce the Bill Walton Show. So the great thing about the whole experience for me, and the shows were great, but the best part was Bill religiously was going to be at his mic. I think he was doing it from San Diego or like California at this point. So we had a connection. So SiriusXM's headquarters in New York City. So he was going to do it from his home. He would be at the microphone, ready to go 15 minutes before every show, like ready to go, like notes and what he's going to talk about, and just so prepared. And, I interacted with many athletes, many former players, many current players. If I can get them in front of the mic 15 seconds before the show was going to go live, I was doing a good job. Bill was, you required zero hand holding, was always there. So for the 15 minutes, like he would just be on mic, and I would be in a studio that wasn't live at the time, and we would just kind of talk, and he would obviously do most of the talking, but had a way about him to just, and as I filibuster here, as my tribute to Bill Walton, he had a way of just making it all about you. And it's that quality that certain individuals have when they are literally larger than life, but have an ability to just make you feel like you are the important one. And he would ask questions. He had interest in what I was doing, what my career was going to be. Like he asked me at one point, like, all right, so when are you going to get behind the mic and do this for a living? And, I explained that, there was some like anxiety stuff, and, I had a dad, or have a dad actually, that has gotten over it, but had a major stuttering problem. And I don't know if I knew it at the time. I might have. But Bill famously, up through his late 20s, had a major stuttering problem, to the point where it caused him to be very shy, very reserved. And it wasn't until a chance meeting with Marty Glickman, who was obviously, Knicks fans will know him. He is a legendary broadcaster, broadcasting for the Knicks for 20 years or so, Giants football. So like a legend in the broadcasting business. And he was the one that explained to Bill, like he gave him like 3 or 4 tips. One of them being slow down, don't think 3 sentences ahead. And then the other one, and this is something that I took and still do today, is just when you read a book, read aloud. And that gave him an ability to sort of have this like practice time and, speak in front of a mirror. But the reading aloud part really gave him the confidence to just get the repetition. That's all it was. So it's always interesting to think back, like where, he's known obviously as an amazing basketball player, legendary college career, incredible start to an NBA career that we know that you kind of fell short of its ceiling because of foot injuries. But it's really like the broadcasting and the personality, and that's the stuff that people really go to first. Who knows if that would have ever been there without this encounter with Marty Glickman and having that opportunity to build that confidence. But he gave me those same pointers and explained to me like all these things that he did to build his confidence. And he did it in a way that really felt like he was genuinely interested and wanted me to go forward and move ahead. And he just had that way about him, and was just an incredible wealth of knowledge, and just a sweetheart of a man. And, you get to know people. And even though it was only for, I think the show lasted like 6-7 months, like it wasn't a long time, but it was like weekly, those 15 minutes before every show just was an experience and an ability to know someone that I'll never, ever forget, because he had that way about him to make you feel that he really genuinely cared about you. And he was an amazing person.
That is, man, I had no idea that you had that much of an interaction with him. It's funny you're talking about him filibustering. So the news came down, and I saw somebody on Twitter recommend a podcast that he was on, the Press Box. I think it's the Ringer Podcast Network, talking about David Halberstam and the breaks of the game. And I forget what the first question there was a question that the host opened with a question about, I forget what the question was. It was an innocuous question. It was, I don't know. The question itself was probably 10, 15 seconds long. I'm 44 and a half minutes into the podcast. There has not been a second question asked.
I believe it. It's amazing. You wind him up and you just let him go. And there was at least 3 or 4 times, because at SiriusXM, we would have these hard breaks where at 57:30 into the hour, the show, we're just going to break. Like there's no way I can't stop it. I can't like, all right, this is really good. Let me extend this. At that time, when that clock hit that moment, we're in break. And I can't tell you how many times we would be going and there would be like maybe 6 minutes left in the show. And Steve Cohen, radio veteran, would just like slip in. And I remember one time he asked about Casey Jones with about 10 minutes left. And Bill Walton has the most affection for Casey Jones. Like thinks he is just a wonderful, we'll go through a wall for him. Obviously Casey Jones was a coach for the Celtics when they won in 86. And he went on a Casey Jones tangent. We hit the marker. We go to break. Bill's still talking. I don't tell him because I'd gotten to the point where I would just let him go.
So he's not on air at this point.
He's not on air at this point. He is only doing this for me, the board operator, and Steve Cohen. This is who he's doing the last like 6-7 minutes of the show for. He stops. How's that, guys? Bill was amazing again. We'll talk to you next week. And that's what the show had ended 10 minutes ago. But in Bill's world, like he had to get the thoughts out. He had to make sure he would give it, a guy that he revered enough time and enough of, in his mind, enough of the reverence he needed to get out. So you couldn't stop him, and you couldn't stop him on the basketball court, and you couldn't stop him from, obviously making his thoughts known to the world. And it was an amazing gift he had. It's a rare gift, because this, when you have to talk for 20 minutes straight without a break, it's not easy. And he would go, as you alluded to, 45 minutes without a breath, and just do it. And it somehow wouldn't be boring. You would just be along for this amazing ride.
When you listen to him, it's like a tangent. It's one tangent after another, but he always found a way to bring it back to the main road. And it's like, and it keeps, and there's like, I feel like there's a propulsion forward in whatever he's talking about. Like, you never completely get off track. And because he has this like way about, like you're describing it, like this way about him where you just like, you want to hear what he has to say next, which is not something that can be taught. And yeah, part of it is because he's been around for a long time and he has a lot of cool stories and this and that. But yeah, man, is there like a story or something that maybe sticks out to you over the time that you remember from when you were producing that really, stuck with you for whatever reason? I mean,
it's just the time he brought like the entire 86 Celtics team to a Grateful Dead concert, including Robert Parrish. And he actually called Robert up on the show, didn't give him any warning, and was like, and during what we like had to go to a break and sort of like try to figure this out. And you could tell Robert wasn't like keen on the idea of like going on a radio show with like no warning, but it was like, he was on for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but Robert explained like it was not his cup of tea. He was more of like I think he was like an R&B soul fan, and had no recollection of who the Grateful Dead was, and obviously was a fan of the music. But he did say when he was there, because I think Bill got him all like tie-dye shirts, and had like literally like half the team was at this Grateful Dead show, like sitting like stage right, like on the stage watching this performance, and they all kind of got into it because of how passionate Bill was about this band and about this experience and the traveling with them and the whole thing. They all sort of bought into this, and it is like I was a Grateful Dead fan. I don't know if I would call myself a Dead fan now, but like at that time, he would just make you
got into it.
Because he was so passionate about it, and he was passionate about all things, and that was like one of his other great gifts, that he could disseminate that passion in a way that like made you feel it. And that was one of those times where like you bring this like renowned, historically great team to a Grateful Dead show, and he's just like, I think this was his first year with this team and trying to fit in, and they were all into it. And I think it's because the way he loves and the way he lived his life, it was so contagious.
Like, I don't know, when someone passes away, I don't know how you feel about this, but my instinct is like the best way to like honor that person is to try to take lessons from how they live their life. And obviously with Walton, that's pretty easy, because you feel like he was one of those people that got the most out of the life that he had, to the point where obviously it's always sad when somebody passes, but it's like, it really feels like a loss. And like, I think it's, I don't know, the thing I find myself admiring when like the more and more I read about like different stories, like hearing you talk about him, is just the ability to not only be like present in every moment, but really to get the most out of like every opportunity you have to do anything, any interaction you have, you're going to make it the best possible interaction you could possibly have. And that's like one of those things like I think about, and I know I'd like to think I try to do, but I know I don't do it very well. And I don't feel like most people do it very well. And the fact that he was so good at it is like, I don't know, that says something to me about, I don't know what it says, but it says something to me about who he was and how he lived.
It's a great lesson, and I think it came easy to him, which is probably like, I
guess it did, yeah.
I think it did come easy for him. I mean, I think it was Mike Greenberg told a story today about they did this wedding for a couple people. I think it was the husband was worked at ESPN, but they did this whole like wedding program for ESPN, and I think it might have been for Mike and Mike. And it was, they had family members and they were Gator fans. So they had like the Gator mascot there. And Bill Walton just happened to be in Bristol around that area and just called Mike up and like, hey, this sounds like an amazing time. Like, I know I'm not invited to this wedding, but can I just show up? Because this sounds like the best thing to do. And he showed up, and like you have obviously video and all this of the wedding, and you just see this like 6'11" Bill Walton guy just standing out amongst all these like family members of this couple that's getting married, and he had the biggest smile and he's clapping and he's so into the proceedings, and just this like random thing. He just wanted to be a part of it because it seemed like a good time. And that is just an example of what you're talking about. And I also like fail to always live up to that motto, but it is a great lesson.
No, we could try. That's really cool, man, that you got to produce that show for as long as I genuinely, again, I'm like still stunned that I had no idea that was on your resume, as it were.
Before we transition, I do want to, because it is, I think his personality and who he was as a person has to come first when you're talking about him, but it is always nice to remember like how dominant he was as a basketball player at his best. And, you could talk about like, is he the greatest college, Kareem, obviously, but like he's got an argument to be one of the, 3 or 4 best college players to ever play.
We were just talking about it. Yeah. I remember I was saying to Ray, I had a magazine when I was a kid, maybe when I was a teenager or something, that ranked, because Shaq was on the list. So it couldn't have been too early 90s. I forget if like Grant Hill was on there too. Maybe it was mid late 90s, and it ranked him second to Kareem. Which feels like where a lot of people have him.
Yeah. The finals against Memphis, 21 of 22 from the field, scored 44 and I think 32 minutes. The game was a blowout, so it probably could have gone for 50 easy if the game was close. And then obviously the performances in Portland his first 3 years. Just watching some tape today, what was stunning about his rebounding, like he was obviously an amazing defensive rebounder, but his ability to rebound and then almost in one motion turn and hit that outlet pass, and then you're on a fast break and just kickstarting offense in that way and just controlling the defensive backboard, but also leading to advantages on the other end. Just a really electric offensive talent who, it's a shame that he had all the injuries, but he did get everything he could out of a body that just didn't hold up as well as it should. But an incredible basketball player, an even better person, which is saying something.
It is. No, I mean, I'm thinking about it now. And like, so 77, obviously they win the championship. The next season, they lose to Seattle in a playoff series where Walton actually played like a game and a half of that series, and then he injured himself again. But like the Seattle team that they lost to, I mean, hold on, I'm looking at it right now. That Seattle team was 47-35. Like, it was not a great Sonics team. And then they went on to play the Bullets in the finals, the eventual world champion Bullets, and the Bullets were 44-38. Like, that wasn't a great. And then the following year, it was the same 2 teams that met in the finals. This time, Seattle came out on top, but like that. Those next 2 years after the Blazers won their championship, like, are often looked at as like this kind of I don't want to say forgotten about period in NBA history, but like it was like the 70s. You had like these great Knicks teams, and you had like the great Kareem, Bucks teams, and obviously it culminated with this great Blazers team. And then the 80s obviously brought on, Lakers and Celtics. And then from there, but it felt like that, like it shouldn't have been just one, right? Like if he had stayed, again, it's a great what if he had stayed healthy, but like there was at least another championship in there for the Blazers, if not 2. And like, I mean, he's still remembered. Obviously, needless to say, he's still remembered. We're here talking about him on a Knicks podcast. So, and that's a testament to him and his staying power and as you've said, his personality. But like the basketball, man, it's He's a unique player, right?
Unique player. And, I know video is hard to come by because he was kind of right. His peak was right before, like, you can get really good video of the 80s, and there's not a ton of him as a Blazer, and obviously not as a Bruin. But if you go back and watch some of the 86 highlights of that Celtics team, that first year he was there, sixth man, and it was really obviously not his peak form, but he was a very good player for that roster, and really just was a kind of the piece to make them go from, like, obviously a great team to, like, one of maybe the greatest collection of basketball players to ever play.
86,
the 86 team. I mean, just like, you can argue they're top 5 probably. I mean, it's the 85, 86 team. I mean,
it was probably Mikhail's best year because he was a full-time starter by that point. I was looking at some of their stats today, and, like, after the big three, like, Walton was like the next guy up in terms of, like, all the advanced metrics and whatnot, even though we played like 15, 16 minutes a game. Like, he wasn't playing that much, but it seemed like he was a real, like you put it, like a connective piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, it's when I, having the interactions I did have with him and just kind of following his career, just what a story, the broadcasting arc of him and all the Sunday Knicks games where it was him, Snapper Jones and Tom Hammond, like that trio, as on those NBC games covering a lot of those late 90s Knicks. They were on the call for the Larry Johnson 4-point play. So he's got, there's some Knicks through lines there. And obviously I talked about the Marty Glickman moment for him early on in our discussion. So but just, I obviously love talking about him, and thank you for letting me share some of those things, which I don't think I've shared with a lot of people outside of that SiriusXM world when I was over there.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to do so. All right, we're going to take a quick minute to say hi to our friends at Foreplay. What's up, Knicks fans? The other day I was talking to 2 girls, and they were telling me how into Foreplay they are and how they wished they had more single guys to do it with. No, not that foreplay. We're not talking about getting teed up on the pod. I'm talking FOURPLAY, Foreplay. It's an app where single friends team up and double date other single friends. It's more fun, lower pressure, and a safer way to meet new people, which is exactly why single girls love it. They do. In fact, they love it so much that they make up the majority of teams on the app, as in a 3-to-1 ratio in your favor. Look, we all know everything is better with a friend. Just ask Josh and Jalen, even if Brunson won't admit it. And with Foreplay, you don't have to sacrifice bromance for romance, because it's a chance to enjoy a night out with a buddy while meeting 2 new people in a more social environment without any expectations. The icing on the cake, it is totally free. All right, it's game time. So head over to the App Store now and download Foreplay. That's FOURPLAY, and get ready for a little 2-on-2 pickup. I want to get a quick Knicks thing from you before I let you go.
Sure.
I got to run, but I haven't talked to you other than the night the season ended. I haven't talked to you since then. I've started to try to wrap my mind around the offseason ahead and, like, some of the difficult choices that entails. I want to get you on one thing in particular, because you have been, I think, as big a proponent, if that's the right word, of Julius Randle's importance to this team as anyone out there that I know of. And that's not just because you're like some blind, like, Randle stan. I think you appreciate what he does and how much he means to the team. So I'm just going to kind of, like, ask you this, like, of the names, because I think there's this weird conversation going on right now with the Knicks. Not that are they better with or without Randle, but, like, should we swap out Randle for this person, that person, if in theory, like, you could? Like, are you approaching this offseason thinking purely like, I want to see what we can put between Randle and Brunson, or is there a guy out there for you that is, like, on the radar, so to speak, where you would think about maybe making a bigger shift in terms of the lineup?
Yeah, I certainly don't view Randall as like the perfect piece, especially if you're saying how much does he work with Jalen Brunson, because it all comes back to like how that player works with Jalen Brunson. That's got to be the first thought. I think he does a lot of great things, and I think they are a better match than I think some people give them credit for. But that's not to say he's the perfect match. And I think there are theoretically guys out there that could be a more seamless partner with Jalen Brunson, that would have more of a defensive, because it is, when you have Jalen Brunson and you're already down in terms of on the defensive end, you start there. And Julius, for all the things I love about him, we all know about the defensive struggles at times. So it does create this concern there. And there are star players out there that wouldn't have that concern. You talked about in your newsletter, Giannis being like a guy that would fit so many boxes, but how attainable is he and all that. My big thing is like, of the guys that could be available, like I just don't know if it makes sense to upset this core right now. And could you use like the bogey contract, which is, you did a great job of sort of illustrating like how important that contract is in terms of like not only including it with another piece to get a bigger player, but also just maybe using that to bring in someone that's maybe a little bit better and just using that single salary. So you could do that, or just let the salary expire and try to keep under, one of the aprons or the tax. So I think there's just a lot of like moving parts. I am really bought into this core as is. And if assuming you bring back Anunoby, you bring back Hartenstein, and you figure out a way to make improvements, in the rotation, I think I would agree this team wouldn't be maybe in your top 5 championship contenders coming in, but I would have them right outside that window. And then you talked about like, the Mavericks weren't there coming in. That I don't think the T-Bulls were before the season. So I would view the Knicks as a relevant championship contender if they brought back this core, made some improvements. And I think Randall's a big piece of that, but that's not to say you can't sell me on a better plan forward. It's just that plan forward to get a player at least as good as him, if not better. It's just so hard to do. And I'm a little skeptical of that actually coming to fruition, I guess.
Yeah. Like, to me, this is like falls squarely in the category of like, it's oversimplistic, but like the grass isn't always greener. Mm-hmm. Like there are, like I was writing for a newsletter for Wednesday, and like talking about like Mikal Bridges. I'm putting aside the Knicks net stuff and the fact that a trade between those two teams might not ever happen. Like there are fans out there, I think, who, and I'm not saying this is not a justifiable position, who would like swap out Julius for Mikal Bridges. And Mikal Bridges is a really nice player. I think he'll probably still wind up making an all-star team, maybe in the right circumstances. But just like, what do we always come back to? It's like, okay, how many guys on your team do you have that draw 2 to the ball? And it's like, we know Julius does it, and we know that there's a formula there that works. And, Mikal, for all as good as he is, like that's maybe not, he's not quite at that. I mean, he's not at the level of Julius. He's just not. And if you add him, like, so, but at the end of the day, I think I'm with you. Like, yeah, great. If Giannis goes to Milwaukee tomorrow and he's like, yeah, I want out. Like, okay, great. You go get Antetokounmpo and that's it. But I don't think that's happening. So I struggle to see anybody out there right now, realistically, that I'd be like, yes, let's, we could use Julius and picks another salary and like, let's make the change. I don't see it happening.
I don't either. And look, I'm sure there, because you do, as you illustrated, the window is now in terms of if you're going to do it and have the most flexibility. It's easier. Yeah, it's easier for sure. Because once you bring in these guys, you re-sign your own, you're just maybe a draft pick or two. Like they're going to be at a point where it's just going to be hard to bring in, once you hit the first apron, it's right. You can't, it's got to be 100% of the incoming salary, right?
You can't, basically, once you're over the first apron, you can't take back more money than you send out, which again, by itself, that's not a death knell to every trade. Unless you are, unless you're trading with another team that's also over an apron. So it gets complicated.
it's very complicated, but I am just looking forward to what comes of this, because I do have confidence that the front office will, they know the moment, and they know like the window to win it is now. Like it's next year. Like that's your window's now started. You probably have like a 3 to 4 year window to make this happen, with keeping, Jalen Brunson's prime in the forefront of your mind. So I think this is it's a pressure packed offseason for this front office, but one, I think they are ready for the moment, and it doesn't need to be a home run. It could be a double, and you could be right in the thick of things.
You could, I mean, look, the Mavericks are a win away from going to the finals because they
with a double and a single, maybe, and they just did enough.
And look, everybody needs a little luck. Everybody needs a little, opportunistic. There's an opportunistic part of it. The Mavs obviously traded for Kyrie when he was damaged goods. The Knicks got Jalen Brunson, and actually the guy we're talking about, Julius Randle. Like those guys, both of those guys showing up. So they're obviously trying to do something which is hard to do, which is to build a team without drafting a star player. But look, they've come this far. Like you, I believe in the front office, and we'll see what they do. All right. I gotta run. DJ, anything else from you before we get out of here?
No, I mean, I guess it's parity right now. So I think that might be, if you're going to go back with this team and just say, listen, the league is right now at a point where you can probably come up with 7 or 8 teams that can win a title or get to a conference final, we get to a finals. This might be that window that might be more, it give you more impetus to maybe hold the course and not do something so drastic and just keep moving forward. Just thinking about that part, but I appreciate it. And listen, it's going to be a fun off season. I'm sure we'll be talking a bunch as things happen.
I was about to say you're going to hear more from DJ over the course of the summer. So thank you for seriously, genuinely, thank you for coming on today. This was really cool to hear some stories about Bill and also some Knicks talk as well.
Thank you.